Shrek approached a group of peasants, all looking fearfully over their shoulders. "You must help us," they cried. "Those darn crazy witches have been harassing us non-stop. They're too darn fast to catch with pitchforks. But I'll bet one of your famous gas clouds would stop them dead in their tracks. Then you'll have a chance to get your hands on them. Please stop the wicked witches and beat some sense into them."
Now, the game does call them wicked witches, but when they're hopping around on their broomsticks, they're just talking about how fun it is to fly. It doesn't really seem like they're harassing anybody, they're just kind of flying around having a good time. And they're not even really flying, it looks like they're just kind of jostling up and down. Like I could probably do that if you gave me a broomstick. They might just be senile old ladies. Anyway, about the gameplay, they do have the distinction of being a lot harder to chase down than the dancing cow. The premise is the same, we need to fart on them, and then from there it's just a quick punch to finish them off. The punching is really just a formality, gassing them is the main idea. If you want to be smart about it, the best thing you can do is run in front of them and lead them directly into your gas cloud, you know, while they're chasing you. That's kind of fun, and that's probably the best way to get the job done, but I just run up to them and spam the gas clouds until they're hit with it. That also works, you know?
The graveyard caretaker ran to Shrek for help. "Shrek, you must go down into the crypt. There are some nasty vampire bats infesting the place. Please, clear them out for me." Shrek smiled. "Some pesky bats? No problem." He marched off to the crypt.
So this level is called Creepy Crypt, but there are actually two areas. There's the crypt, and then there's outside the crypt. This time we're heading into the crypt itself. Now, the bats might frustrate some people because they could be hard to find, but they actually have really clear red lights around them. I'm actually surprised and delighted at this, because a lot of other 3D platformers would make the bats much harder to spot, wouldn't have bothered to notify you of the exact area they're in. But in this one, you know, big red light where the bats are. Finding them is still a challenge because the crypt is kind of maze-like, but the platforming to get to them is supposed to be the main challenge, I think. And I would comment on that, but sadly I've lost the ability to comment on the platforming. This game's controls feel weird, and as such I imagine the platforming feels weird, but I've gotten so used to it that I can't really comment on it anymore. Anyway, I memorized where all the bats are, so, you know, this only takes a couple minutes, maybe just a minute. But even if you didn't memorize the location of the bats, it's a small area, and like I said, there are big red lights pointing to them, so you'd be able to find them for sure.
A young boy tugged on Shrek's vest. He looked up with tears in his eyes. "Shrek, sir, it's about all the skeletons wandering about. They scaring you? You want me to pummel them?" Shrek began to roll up his sleeve. "No," the boy shouted. "All they want to do is dance. I love to watch the skeletons dance." Shrek looked puzzled. The boy continued. "The stereo system is on the fritz again. Give the speaker a good kick and bring the skeletons over so they can hear. That'll get things rocking. Please turn on the tunes and get the skeletons dancing."
I'm sure you've noticed at this point that this game doesn't have a lot of mechanics, but it does try to explore what it has. For example, this time it's trying to explore the grabbing mechanics. The skeletons are a sufficiently strong enemy type, even though they're not really enemies, so we do need to knock them out before we grab them, or else they'll hurt us. We need to come down here to turn on the music first. There are 3 skeletons, one of them is in the crypt and 2 are outside the crypt. We're gonna get the guy in the crypt first because we're already here. Now the challenge in this mission is supposed to come from getting the skeletons into the room with the music, which I imagine can be kind of challenging if you're not quite sure how to take it on. With the skeleton inside the crypt, you kind of have to do things the long and slow way. As was already discussed very briefly, there are 2 kinds of throws we can do. We can kick our grabbed object to hurl it high in the air, or we can just shove it. We're going to be using both for this particular mission. We want to get the skeleton up on these high platforms, which requires the kick. Otherwise, we'll just throw him into the wall, which won't get anything accomplished. After we get him up on these platforms, there are a couple of big gaps, and then he'll be in the room with the music. Now, after we kick him across these gaps, he's supposed to walk toward the music on his own. He's programmed to do that. But sometimes the skeletons get stuck or just stand there. Which is unfortunate, but you're probably going to chase after the skeleton and throw him in the room anyway just to be safe. Because even though he shouldn't wander off the ledge, you know, you're always afraid that that's a possibility, so you don't want to let that happen. Getting our way back out of the crypt requires an interesting series of jumps. The wall jumping in this game is a bit weird. I'm sure it looks weird. It's incredibly fast and sensitive, but I've gotten used to it, so I can't really talk about any specific challenges with it or anything like that. But I imagine because it's so fast and sensitive and there are so many places you could use it that it would be ideal to speedrun. And I don't think there's going to be anyone speedrunning this game anytime soon, at least not professionally. But I imagine it would be fun to do for people who are obsessed with that kind of thing. This time we're going to use the shove to throw the guy directly into the room without bothering with a long way. That's probably not how you're intended to do it, but when have I ever done things as they're intended? Now we're just gonna hop up there to make sure that he goes to the music. This time I wait, because I want to show you that he's supposed to walk toward it, but he takes too long, so I lose my patience and go over there to throw him in myself. You can see he's wandering near it, but he's not going in there, which is a shame. I really wanted to show that off. Even after you throw them toward the music, sometimes they take a while to get into position, but don't worry, the game's not broken. It'll figure out what to do eventually. You might be looking at this level and be thinking that the platforming has gotten more challenging, and I suppose that's true, yeah. It's mostly about pathfinding, though. After you know which path you're supposed to take, it's not so bad, but there is one specific platforming challenge later that I can actually comment on, because it's just that difficult. And they throw some interesting ideas in there, too. Anyway, this is the last skeleton, same as the one we did previously. We're just gonna throw him straight into the room like his buddy. This is a really repetitive mission. Takes a lot longer than the others because of the way you must complete it. And keep in mind, I'm taking a bit of a shortcut with this one. I feel like they could have just used one skeleton, and the idea would have been gotten. But the idea they intended you to get isn't bad or anything, you know, it's an exploration of the grabbing mechanics, which is one of the few mechanics in the game, so I can't really complain about it.
Little Miss Muffet was shaking like a leaf. Spiders everywhere! She looked over her shoulder and then back at Shrek as her eyes widened. There are baby spiders crawling around everywhere. Her voice began to rise hysterically. You must return them to the mama spider and get rid of them or my skin is gonna crawl off. Shrek smiled politely and nodded as he slowly backed away.
This one is insultingly easy. We just have to grab the baby spiders, take them to the mama spider, and then we're done. The spiders don't really put up a fight, they're easy to find, and the worst thing that can happen is they fall into a crack like that right there. So all in all, this is one of the worst stages to show off the game, even if I think it has my favorite music. Yeah, this might be my favorite music in the game. This is one of the worst stages to show off the game, but the skeleton mission isn't so bad. The skeleton mission actually has quite a bit of design that hints that there's something more going on with the game. But this spider mission and the gassing the witches mission, not really, no. The mission with the bats is also pretty decent because it uses the level design to its advantage and it's mostly about pathfinding. But the skeleton mission contains both an exploration of the grabbing mechanics and pathfinding instead of just one of those, so it's far superior. You know, the mission with the bats isn't really exploring any of the game's mechanics, just making smart use of the level. Keep in mind, I'm not saying this is a good game by any means, I'm just, you know, there's design here, and I feel like nobody else would even bother to point it out if I don't, so that's why we're doing this. Have I mentioned, though, that this particular level is insultingly easy and boring? Because it is. It's really not necessary. By the way, the spider slowly makes her way out from the corner she's in, presumably so it will be easier for you to place the babies near her. I guess that's kinda neat, instead of having her stay static the whole time. It's a little weird, but neat. When you grab the spiders, the witches seem to aggressively be on your ass and try to knock the spider out of your hands for some reason, but don't worry about it. You're way faster than them.